Hey everyone, this is Heather and Jenny with Surviving Darkness, and we are on episode 7. The title of this week's podcast is going to be Obstacles in the Way. So we're going to talk about things that we have struggled with or that we've been hit with when we were trying to get this podcast underway or while we've been doing it. And the verse that Heather found that was going to go along with the podcast for today is, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Ephesians 6:12.
I did that verse because people don't really understand that a lot of the things and a lot of attacks that seem to come from people aren't really so much people. It's whatever spirits they're operating in. So as we've gone through trying to do the podcast and even talking about doing the podcast, we've had different things come up against us. But I just wanted to start off saying that I had felt for probably close to a year that there's something else that I really needed to be doing for God. And I really didn't know what it was. We had done the radio ministry and that was good, I guess, for the time being. But I still didn't feel like that's exactly where God wanted us. So as we
that was
talked
10 years ago. So we
Right.
still weren't finished, had unfinished business, I guess you'd
And
say.
we've talked several times and I'm like, I think I want to do a book. And I would start and I was like, I just don't even really know where to start. And I told you at one point, I was like, well, maybe I'll just do the voice text and just tell the story. And then later do a book on everything that I've like dictated. And then I was like, that don't really sound that great either. And then one night I was just laying in the bed and I was like, you know what? The internet is such a big platform right now. Everybody uses the internet for everything to get stuff out there. But I'm not all that
tech savvy.
Yes, on like, I don't really even know how to do TikTok. I don't know how to do hardly any of those things. So I was like, I don't know. And then I talked to my son and I was like, what's your thought on maybe doing like a podcast or something? I don't even really know what a podcast is, but what is your thoughts on it? And he said, well, I think I've got everything in my room that you need to be able to do a podcast. So I was like, well, I can't really say no because it's right there. And then my cousin was living with us and she said, I have a second microphone if you and Jenny would want to do it. Because I was like, I don't really feel that it's something I want to do on my own. So then I texted you about it and you were there with a friend and it just lined up for us to do it. And
not too long before that had been the first time that probably about 6 months before this was the first time I'd ever thought about writing about it. And I had told you I don't want to write it, but maybe if I talk to somebody, they could write what I'm talking about, you know?
Right.
And then that just, it's kind of like wasn't supposed to be. That wasn't what we were supposed to be doing.
It's like God was dealing with you and dealing with me and talking to both of us about getting our story out, but we weren't really sure exactly what direction to go to get our stories out. And we have a lot of similarities in our stories, but we also have a lot of differences too. So I was like, I don't know how to go about it. Mm-hmm. And I was working, you were working, and it just never lined up right. So I had some issues with my neck and wound up not able to work. And then it was like God was really, really tugging at me to get the word out. And I was like, I don't know what you want, God. I mean, it was like, I felt like almost in a little battle there because me not knowing and him tugging to do it. And it's probably just me being stubborn and being like, I don't know what you want me to do, so I'm just not going to do it right now. But I just really felt like he wanted it out now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I don't know the exact reason. I mean, God knows the exact reason that he wanted
he
it
has
now.
his timing, like for everything. Yes,
and it is his timing.
Mm-hmm.
It's been years since we've gone through a lot of the stuff that we went through that were similar. I mean, over the years, I've still had stuff going on, but not to that degree. So I just feel like it's that time.
And like we've talked before, we were at two different points in actually talking about what we've had going on. You've talked about, you're further along in, I guess you'd say, in your journey of actually speaking about it. I've only been speaking about it for about, I don't know, just a few years now. But like you said, I was with a friend when you texted me, and we were at church practicing. We hadn't talked about this at all whatsoever. So when you messaged me, I said it was like a punch to the gut, because I was not expecting it, for one. And normally when we talk about this stuff, we kind of give each other a little bit of a heads up.
It was sporadic. Yeah. I mean, it was, I threw you for a loop.
Yes. And so I looked at my friend and I read her the message, and I just, like, I'm even like right now, I'm like, I don't even know what I said, because I just looked at her and I was like, I don't even know what to think about this. And she looked at me and she said, well, I don't think that it's something that you need to shut down. She said, I think that you need to pray about it and give it some time and think about it. And which really surprised me, because she knows a lot about everything that has happened and knows how I feel about talking about things, and that I don't talk about things. But we kind of bounce things off of each other too, with our situations with God and all of that. And we're just good friends, and we pray for each other. And so it was almost like the very next week when we had practice again, I said, well, we're getting ready to record. And she said, so you prayed about it? I said, yeah. And the next day it was like, yes, this is what we have to do. And we started talking about it for real then.
It was just fast.
It was.
It was, there wasn't a whole lot of, well, let me think about it for a while.
Right.
And talking ourselves out of it. It was, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it wasn't, I didn't feel any kind of negativity, like maybe not, or uncertainty.
And she even said, when God tells you to do it, do not hesitate. And that's what she said. And I was like, yeah, because we're all really bad about waiting. Mm-hmm. Everyone is, you know.
Just, to me, it just seemed now.
Yes.
I just kept hearing, do
and
it
for
now.
her to say that, it was like confirmation that, right. Yes, this is a time for it.
Right.
You know, no, don't continue to pray on it. You know, of course you want to pray about it, but I'm saying, you know, don't just let that be the thing that holds you back from it. Well, I'm waiting for an answer. We had our answer. Don't wait. You know, don't wait. Do it.
Right. And I think it was January. Was it January the 19th or the 16th? I don't remember the exact date when we put out our first podcast. It was somewhere in that area, 16th or the 19th. The exact date isn't that important. But just in this short amount of time, we've got like 92 people that watch the episodes pretty regularly.
Listen to them.
Or listen to them, not watch them. I don't know why I always say watch. I guess because I look at it. Yeah. It's just the emblem or whatever, symbol or whatever on the screen. But I still, for some reason, feel like I got to look at my iPad or look at my phone when I'm listening to it.
And we're still old school.
Yes. Yes. If you're recording, you got to be able to see it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've had 92 people or whatever listen to it. And we've had 102 views on all the podcasts that have been uploaded. And I think that's pretty good for a small town people.
Right. Yes. Yes. And for the topic, you know what I mean? It's not a happy-go-lucky topic.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's some people steer away from listening or trying to follow those things.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes. And our thing is talking about obstacles when deciding to do the podcast. Fear and insecurities were like a big thing for us. debated back and forth and took us quite a few weeks even uploading different episodes and stuff to finally decide that we would let people know who we were other than just Heather Jenny.
Yeah.
And that was a sort of a big decision because we've talked about some stuff that some people probably think is just crazy.
Yes.
And knowing us and knowing our family, they probably are like, I just can't believe that could ever happen. So it was sort of a fear of people knowing that it was exactly us.
Yeah.
That this all happened with, for one. And I guess the uncertainty of what people would say. So it took us a little bit
perceived.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. It took us a little bit to decide that we really didn't, I don't want to say we don't care what people think.
Right. But it's the truth.
It's, yes.
We're putting the truth out there.
And
it is what it is.
Right. And people can have their opinion one way or the other, whether they want to believe it or not. But we know, I had said in that one podcast, it's our story, but it's not our story. It's our truth.
It is the truth.
It's our truth. This is really what happened with us. And I can't say that if I heard it from someone else that I wouldn't hesitate for a second and say, can that really happen?
Yeah.
So.
Or I know that person, and I just don't see them being like that,
Or that, yes.
Yeah.
Or
and that's okay.
I would have never known they were going through something like that because they just didn't seem like they were going through something like that.
And I guess it was about 2 years ago, I was at church again practicing a song with another lady. And she is a wonderful lady of God. And I had told her a little bit of our story, a little bit of what we had gone through. And again, I did not do that very often. And, it, not at all. And there was something with us that night that was comforting to me and was letting me know it's okay to talk to her about this. And as I was telling her some of the stories or the things that we had gone through and seen and the horrificness of everything, she said then, y'all's story is one that is going to be told. And that sticks with me so much because she didn't say it needs to be told or you should tell this story. It is one that is going to be told. And so she knew this, even 2 years ago, that it was going to happen.
Right.
And that's what she said when we started the podcast.
Right.
And she listened to the first week and said that it actually helped one of her friends because she had gone through things with her dad. And these two were very good friends. And, the one lady that I know had no idea that she had gone through that. So listening to the podcast actually helped her friend open up to her, which, that helps us. That makes us feel better because that's what this is for.
Right.
So people feel, and whether they talk to us about it or not, that's fine. It doesn't matter. As long as they're talking to somebody who they feel comfortable enough and trust to talk about it. If this opens that door for them to be able to do that and feel comfortable, then that's what we're doing this for.
Yeah. Allow them to have a safe place, a safe space, and know that they're not the only ones that have gone through things. There are people out there, and that if you open up, you might find out that people that you talk to on a regular basis may have gone through the same thing, but we're sort of scared to say anything too.
Yes.
Like we've had people contact us and say, I didn't go through exactly what you went through, but I went through something similar. And someday I may talk to you about that. I'm not there yet, but I may want to sit down. I know that option's there.
Yes.
If I decide that I really want to talk to someone and get this out, I know that you all are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust you all enough to open up and talk to you all about it.
And even if it wasn't the same thing we went through, they went through some type of darkness, some type of trauma. And we're not going to be like, oh, well, we can't talk to you about that. We didn't go through that. No, they still survived their own darkness.
Right.
Which is what we are talking to people about. We are survivors. And, you don't have to relive everything and go back on it all the time. You want to move forward from it, but you still have to think about things that happened in order to move forward. You have to face it.
We may not have gone through like some of the stuff, but it's the point of view. We didn't personally deal with addiction.
Correct.
Our own addictions, but we have dealt with addiction because we've had family members who are addicted to substances, alcohol, different things. So we have the knowledge of what it's like to be the ones that have to learn how to deal with someone who does abuse alcohol or drugs.
And how much it affects families.
Yes. We've had like suicidal tendencies. We've had suicide within the family. We've not tried it, but we know what it's like to have someone who has tried or who has actually managed.
Yes.
So,
and we know what it's like to get to your lowest point and understand how somebody can get to the point of taking their own lives.
Right.
So, yes.
Right. So it's like we haven't had experience in all of those things, but we've experienced all of those things. So that helps too, because they're able to talk to us about, you know, this is what I felt. This is what I tried to do to myself, or this is what I'm dealing with. This is the hold that drugs have on me. This is the hold that alcohol has on me. And we have enough knowledge, like through our churches and stuff, to know that not only is that like a physical thing and a mental thing, but it's a spiritual thing too. There are spirits that attach to people that keep them in bondage. There is a spirit of bondage. There is a spirit of heaviness, and those things cause depression, cause you to feel weighed down. Then you have the spirit of bondage that attaches to you, that causes the addictions, makes you stay in that state because you feel like there's no way out. And that's how the enemy operates. He operates in those spirits. So as that verse said, we're not necessarily battling against flesh and blood. We're not necessarily battling against people, but we're battling against forces that these people operate in.
Yes.
And speaking of that, like, we had planned to do our first recording on a Friday. And I seriously believe that Jenny came under attack. And actually, I guess both of us, or the whole family pretty much, by someone operating in a Jezebel spirit. And the husband was in the Ahab spirit. He didn't have the gumption to put his foot down and say, no, this isn't how it is, and this is not what's going to happen. So basically, we had people come at us, and a situation come at us to try to stop us before we even started our first podcast. And it came out of nowhere, from somewhere that we never would have expected. And it actually came from a church person. So, and it was ugly. It was downright ugly. That's the only way I can describe the situation. And it was definitely not operating in a spirit of God. It was definitely not operating in a very evil spirit to even come up with the thoughts that were even thrown out there. So, I mean, it was definitely not of God. So the enemy stepped in before our first episode and tried to upend our whole world and throw us off track.
Oh, and I took a good mental beating.
Yes.
That week. I really did.
Yes. And I did a lot of praying. I was like, and that's the thing. Since we've started this, we have had attacks come at us from places that we would have never, ever imagined.
Yeah.
And it's just being crazy. And that's how we know that we're doing what God wants us to do, because the enemy doesn't try to stop what God, or the enemy doesn't try to stop something that God doesn't have a hand in.
Right. Yes.
If it's not something that God is going to be glorified with, he don't care. If we're doing something for the devil, if we're glorifying the devil and all of that, he's going to be like, I'm not putting any obstacles in their way because, hey, this helps me out. But when you're doing work for God, the enemy comes at you he got hard, very hard. And it's not things that you see coming. It's things that you would have never even thought. Because that one I would have never imagined in a million years. And I'm the one that got the original or the first phone call. And it took me probably a good 15, 20 minutes to actually understand and comprehend exactly what she was getting at. And then I was like, whoa, And then when I finally got my senses and wrapped my head around exactly what was being said, I was like, girl, are you crazy? Yeah. And that's when she decided she was not going to talk to me anymore and hung up. And I was like, but it took me that long because it was so unexpected coming from that person. But God was quick to reveal, don't hold it against her. Don't hold it against him. Just pray that they realize that they're operating in a Jezebel spirit. They're operating in an Ahab spirit. And I'm just going to keep praying for them. I'm praying for them. They may no longer be in our lives. And that's their choice. But the situation was just crazy. It was just crazy.
And then you guys were hit, with numerous financial things.
Yes, I have been sat down. And as I say that, I was like, God sat me down. He was trying to get my attention. I want you to be doing something a little different. I had been doing my job for 23 years. And I wasn't listening. So,
like we all do.
3 months ago, God was like, okay, I'm going to sit you down for a little bit. And now we're doing a podcast. But anyway, I have degenerative disc disease and cervical stenosis and had to have surgery on February the 8th. And went to the doctor last week and found out that he's put me off another 3 months. And I keep getting mixed up. I keep saying 3 years. It seems like it's already been 3 years. And I've got 3 more to go. It feels almost like a prison sentence. You've been 3 years and it's actually only been 3 months. But you got 3 years to go.
Yes.
But I don't even know after that 3 months what they'll say then. Right now it's just a waiting game and sort of analyzing and seeing if after stabilizing the one section, if the section up above, how long it's going to last. Because now it's got the brunt of the weight off of it or on it because the other part is now stable. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back to the job that I'm doing. And it's been a financial hit hard. But I keep telling myself, God blessed us before this. He knows ahead of time what's going to happen. Before my husband and I got married, he had bought a house and I had bought a house. So we were at a point that, we have 2 houses. We were blessed with that before this even came. So it's just getting all the money together and everything to be able to fix up the one house to sell it. And it's just been crazy as far as finances, but I've had to really focus on God and have him get us through this.
I was just thinking that you were talking about you don't know what's going to happen 3 months from now, but I was saying that it's what God has in store for you 3 months from now.
You're right as far as the 3 months, because here lately I have felt a whole lot of that feeling of keep your calendar open, be available. I don't know what God has in store, but I feel like there is something. I really don't. I'm almost at that place in my life where I'm like, there's something going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that it's almost like anticipation, but at the same time, it's like, when's it going to happen? It's like that some door needs to open. Something needs to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen. And just worrying about finances and stuff. And I'm like, I haven't been able to contribute for 3 months. Sometimes I feel like I'm totally drowning, but I have to believe that God has a plan, and he wouldn't set me down from that job if he doesn't have another option open or something coming. And then I had started looking, like, if I'm not able to do my job anymore, what jobs can I do? And I'm looking at all these job opportunities out there in case I can't do what I was doing before. And it's like, I go to the doctor and he's like, oh, 3 more months. And I'm like, I can't do nothing for 3 more months. So why am I even looking? Why am I worried about it? Because, I mean, I don't know what options are there. I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. I don't know what I'm not going to be allowed to do. I don't know anything at this point. I just really have to, it's one of those tests of trusting God.
And then another obstacle that you were hit with, and we didn't think about either, was, we're talking about finances, and you don't know what's going to happen with your job, but we had thought about unemployment, and then you realized the other day, and I had forgotten about it too, you have to physically be able to look for another job.
Right.
And be able to get another job, and you're not released from the doctor to be able to do that, so you're not eligible for unemployment, which is, right. And we've always, unless we have something going on to keep us from working, we have always worked. And it's hard to sit back and let somebody else take care of everything, and to just be like, okay, God, I know that you're supposed to be the one to take over this, and I'm going to just give it to you and know that you're going to take care of this, and not turn around 10 minutes later and pick it back up.
Right. It's been a real test on patience and trust. We always say, oh, I trust God. Any circumstances, I trust God. But when it comes down to it, do you?
It's hard.
So I've really had to reevaluate my relationship with God. Do I trust him that much to say, I'm not going to worry about what bill is coming up, whether I'm going to have the money to pay the bill? I have to not really just focus on today and know that God's already taken care of tomorrow. And that's hard. That has been a real battle for me. And then, like, before we put out our first, I think it was the first podcast, but we were sort of editing and listening and all. And I had a voicemail that I guess I had my phone off and didn't even know anyone had called. And I listened to it, and it was the surgeon's office saying I had to come up with $2,400 before I could even have my surgery. And I was just like, how am I going to, I haven't worked since November. I'm lucky to have money to put food on the table. Where in the world am I supposed to get $2,400? I guess I'm just not going to have my surgery. So my son said, sit down in that chair. We're going to get this podcast ready to upload on Friday. And you're not going to worry about it because God is taking care of it. So I wound up calling them and talking to her. And she was like, yeah, we have to have the deductible before we do the surgery. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I don't have it.
Right.
If you got to have it, then I guess you're just, we'll just have to wait until I sell a house or whatever I have to do. But I don't have it. I mean, there's no credit cards. There's nothing that I can use to come up with $2,400. So it is what it is. So then a week later, I had already decided, the surgery's just not going to happen right now. It's just not. And the doctor's office called me back and was like, can you come up with $100 down? And I was like, well, yeah, I can do 100. I can't do 24 of them,
right, but
I can do 100. So God had already worked it out for me to have the surgery. And it took my son, who I have like spoken to and into for 20 years. Don't worry about it. God's got it. Don't worry about it. God's got it. For him to turn it around on me and say, don't worry about it, Mom. Sit down. God's got it. So, I mean, he did. He had it. And I had to quit worrying about it because I was like, I'm just not going to have the surgery.
And this was another thing that popped up
during
like at the very beginning of our podcast, either like, well, I guess after the first week of our podcast. And that's what this episode is about, is all these obstacles or things that came up that would divert our attention from this and be like, well, I just can't focus on this right now. You know, I just can't do it. And it was like, no, we're going to continue to do this. So
it's one of those, well, you can't work to get the $2,400 because your neck is messed up, but you can't have the surgery to be able to go back to work without the money. So I was just like, who cares?
And you can't go back to work until you have the surgery.
Right. So it was like a catch-22.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I mean, I can't stress it because I can't change it. Mm-hmm. There was nothing at that. I said, well, I guess it's going to be a month or two down the road when we get one of our houses sold before I can even come up with $2,400, because there was no way. I did not have the means to get $2,400 right now. Mm-hmm. So yes, and it was obstacle after obstacle and stressor after stressor, and I was finally like, well, God wants us to do this, and we're going to quit letting all these things come at us.
So I have issues health-wise, and so it was almost as soon as we started, I started having stomach issues, which is, I have those issues anyways, but it was more so than on a normal basis. And so it was almost like, well, are you going to be able to come over today, or what are we going to do? And finally it was, okay, well, I'm going to come over and we're going to do this regardless. So that's what we did. And when my stomach goes haywire, there are some days that I can't even leave the house. And it was like, nope, we're going to do whatever we have to do. We're still going to get through this. And that's just another thing that was thrown up, to where just something to stop us from doing this. And now we're on week 7.
Right. And then we had computer issues.
Yeah.
And that was last week. We're like getting ready to come in and record the podcast, and we don't have a computer. It's not working. Mm-hmm. So it's been one thing after another, which
literally like 30 minutes before we were, if that long, before we were getting ready to sit down and do it. Heather's son comes in to get everything set up, because he's our technical guy.
He's our editor-in-chief.
Yes. And he was like, so yeah, this might not happen today, but it worked out. He's brilliant with that stuff, thank goodness. And
happen to have an extra RAM.
Yep.
So I'm not as much storage or whatever as the other one had, but he had an extra one around. So the devil came in and was like, y'all ain't doing that podcast today. And God said, there's an extra RAM.
Watch this.
Watch. We're going to do it. We're going to do it anyway. And then, like, my husband had an issue come up, which affects both of us. And it was an issue from the past that has come to the present, a $32,000 issue. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, can anything else possibly happen? And I know that there can be, so I'm just saying that as a joke or sarcastically, because anything can happen. But that's just the things that we've dealt with since
starting this.
Since starting it.
Or even talking about starting this.
And I've had more nightmares.
We all have.
Yes, we have all had a whole lot more nightmares. The enemy is coming at us in our sleep. He's doing everything to say, I'm here and I'm going to do whatever I can to stop you from getting the word out. And every time I think about that and I talk to people, I'm like, the bigger the battle, the bigger your purpose. Mm-hmm. So I know in my heart that this is what God wants us to be doing, or we wouldn't have so many things coming at us every week. I mean, this is just week 7. Mm-hmm. And we've got enough stuff and enough people and things in our family to last to do this for probably a couple of years. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, this is just week 7. But once the enemy knows he's not going to stop us, I'm hoping that it'll slow down a little bit. Because we're not going to stop.
No.
no matter if we have to use a tablet or whatever we have to use to record, we will still record our episodes, and we'll still reach out and say, this are the things that we've gone through. This is how we've overcome. These are the obstacles that have been in our way. We just, like I've said from the beginning, we just want to be real. We don't come in here every week and be like, oh, we've had nothing going on this week. Nothing's tried to stop us. Everything's roses and sunshine. It's not. I don't think anything in our life has ever just been roses and sunshine. We've had to work and fight for everything that we've had in our lives. Even the kids, I've always had to teach them Bible verses to fight. Taught them when they were little. There's no spirit of fear, or we overcome that. There is a spirit of fear, but you are stronger than that spirit.
Yes. Yeah.
So even at a young age, I've taught them how to battle because I didn't know that. I did not know how. We didn't know how to battle.
No.
I didn't want my kids not equipped. And I wasn't one that sat around and said, oh, this is what I went through growing up. This is what I had to battle. When they came to me and said, I'm scared, I've seen this, or I've said that, or seen that, or whatever, I've been like, no, we're not going to let the enemy have his way. You're not going to live in fear like we lived in fear.
And when you're talking about your kids and, the battles and stuff, the one thing that sticks with me the most is like, we didn't talk about this stuff, or I never talked about this stuff in front of them. It was, like I said, several years after they were born, before anything even came out about like me and things like that. But in one of the other episodes, I had talked about one of the things that I had seen whenever I was being bothered, or I'm going to say tortured by the demonic entity. And I had commented and said that, like I said in a couple episodes back, that I had seen the cloaked figure that had, gone across the living room into the kitchen. And I'd never spoken of that to anybody. And Heather's son, when they moved into the one house, when he kind of started seeing things, that was almost like what he saw also. And so that just tells you that it does try to pass on from generation to generation, or whatever it is. It's not just generation to generation, but it just tries to wreak havoc throughout the same family, or however you want to say it. For us to see this, see things that were so similar, and we had never talked about them at all. And mine was, 20 some years ago, and he was 6. So he had no idea what I had seen, because I'd not talked about it to anybody.
And we lived in fear for so long.
Yes.
I was not going to let it do that to my kids too. I thank God that, again, that he put me in a ministry that taught me how to fight back.
Right.
Not to let it consume me with fear. Not to keep me in bondage by that fear. And it's so hard to tell your kids, don't be afraid. Because, it's normal reaction when you see something that's not of this world. And for it to scare you.
As scary as, something straight out of hell. That just, there's no describing that fear.
Right. And you're trying to tell your 7, 8-year-old kid, don't be afraid, because it's going to feed off of that. Well, they're automatically going to be afraid. I'm telling my kid, don't be afraid, but I still have a little bit of fear. When I hear things now, I still jump. It's just automatic reaction. And then I'm like, whoa, no, we're not doing this.
We
You
just
don't-
had
right.
something happen at my house the other night, and not sure exactly what it was. And I normally do not have things happen at my house, and we don't acknowledge things. We just don't. That's how I deal with stuff, and that just doesn't. Anyway. So we just try not to acknowledge or acknowledge anything to give it any power in our house, because it's not as prevalent in our house as it is with you all. We don't have as much happen, and we don't want to take a chance on our little one being affected by anything.
And opening that door
Yes,
for it.
exactly. Yes.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're that little and they're not seeing anything or being bothered by anything, there's no reason to have to explain it. And I probably would have never mentioned anything to my boys growing up if it wasn't aggravating them.
You had to. You didn't have a choice.
Right.
Yes.
Showing itself to them.
Yes.
Them coming to me saying, I'm scared. Because we had just moved into the one house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if my youngest son slept in his room any at all.
Right.
Because it showed itself from the get-go there.
Mm-hmm. I'm very thankful. Like, I'm very thankful that I don't deal with that stuff like you all do. But then I feel bad because you all do still have to deal with things also. And I really do. That makes me feel terrible. But, at the same time, evidently you all are, I don't know what the word is, a little more stronger about dealing with that. Like even your sons have dealt with it for so many years that they are in a good spot in their mind, I guess, with it to be able to deal with it. Not saying it's a good thing, but being able to deal with it better.
Right.
So,
which my youngest son, who since he was little has been able to see things, has pretty well come to terms with it being around or things being around, to where he just like either ignores it or is like, get out of my room.
And eventually we'll get him on here to talk.
He says, yeah, I see you. Get out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not welcome here.
Yes.
Bye. So he's learned over the years that he's the one in charge.
Right.
This is his atmosphere, his domain. I'll either allow you to come in and scare me, or I'll tell you to get out, and that's just how it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know that.
No, we didn't. No.
We did not have any kind of knowledge like that. And
No,
we wouldn't know that if we didn't go through what we went through.
That's exactly right. Yes. Now we have the tools to be able to know, like even just me saying, if I hear something that I cannot explain, like what happened the other night at my house, with my husband, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it was like, okay, whatever. It happened. It is what it is. We're moving on.
Right. And I will say some of those entities are a little bit stronger than others.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Some you can say, get out.
Yes.
Some you have to open the doors, you have to open the windows, and you have to go in hard.
Yes.
Because they don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are 2 seconds, get out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are 15 minutes to an hour. Get out. You have no right here.
Well, like we were talking a couple weeks ago about going to a friend's house, and you and I praying through her house the first time. We were there, an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Right, because they go from room to room.
Yes.
It's like...
And it just took forever of us, the three of us, following everywhere through her house until it was at the very last place that it could go, because it did not want to leave. It was scaring everybody there. It felt it had the power there, and we were taking that power away from it, but it was moving everywhere. It was holding on. It was, taking everything that it could and holding on, and was not leaving. And if we would have given up, it would have given it that more power. And we were like, it's not happening.
And that gift, that ability that God has given to let you know that it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Because they will act like they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
They can give you that false sense that they're gone. But if you operate in the spirit, God lets you know they're not gone. He will, and like I said, with that one person that was possessed, I know good and well she was possessed, he was like, stop, because she doesn't want rid of it.
Right.
So having that relationship with God gives you that discernment to know, is this thing really gone, or is it just trying to trick me? And does this person really want loose of this, or are they feeding off of the power?
Right.
That person has to be at that point that they no longer want to live like that.
And anything that Satan is involved with, he wants all the power.
Yes, he wants the power. He wants the glory.
He wants to show that power. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
But that's like with anything that you back in the corner. Mm-hmm. It's going to act like it's so much stronger to try to intimidate you so that you'll stop.
Yes.
But when you don't, when you don't stop, you realize that was like the last resort for it. As I'm gonna puff my chest out and I'm gonna act like I'm so much stronger than you and your God, so that you'll leave me alone. Mm-hmm. But that just means that it knows it's the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's that last hurrah before the end.
Yeah, before it's gone.
Right,
and it can't. It can try to come back or whatever, but it doesn't have any place there. Right.
I guess what I'm trying to think of how I wanted to word this. We're not thankful so much for the things that we've gone through. It's not like, oh, I am so glad that we went through all of this. That is not at all what I'm saying. But if we hadn't gone through that, we would not be able to reach people. We wouldn't know how to fight. We wouldn't know anything about any of that. So I'm not thankful so much that we went through that. I'm thankful that God pulled us through it, that he led us through it, and that we came out stronger. We came out with more knowledge of the good and the evil. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, they want to talk about the good. They want to talk about God. They want to talk about angels, but they don't want to acknowledge that there's the other side of the coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But there is, and that's a lot of the stigma as to why people don't talk about it, because people don't want to acknowledge that there's God and angels, and that there's Satan, and that there's demons.
And this is not any type of dig at any type of religion or church or whatever, but there are even churches who won't really talk about Satan and the demons and stuff. They'll say there's heaven and hell, right, but they don't really talk about what's in hell.
They'll talk about angels.
Yes.
But they're not going to talk about the demonic presences that are on this earth. They are here. They are real. Mm-hmm. They're not just a figment of your imagination.
No.
And the enemy is out to kill, steal, and destroy.
Well, like we said, the church that we grew up in, and we're not saying anything bad about that church, not at all, but I feel like if it would have been presented to them, nothing, they would not have acknowledged what was going on.
I did mention it to someone.
Oh, I did not know this.
And the response was, well, I know about God and I know about angels, but I don't know too much about demons. So I knew then I wasn't getting any help there.
Yes.
So yes, it was mentioned to someone that was very high up in the church that did minister. Mm-hmm. And that's the response I got. There were so many times that I reached out. It wasn't just the one time. I put fillers out, even as a teenager. I put fillers out to see if there was someone who could help.
And this is why we say that, people that we know have been like, well, how did your mom not know? Or, why did it not come out sooner than that, or whatever? God had a reason.
Right.
And so even in that circumstance, will you go to somebody at church who you think will pray with you or help in some situation? Like we said, we are not trying to put down any religion, any churches, any certain people, not by any means at all. It was a different time then, too, than what it is now, and things were not acknowledged like they are now.
Correct.
So it just wasn't the time for that to come out. You know, it just wasn't. And God had a reason for us enduring everything that we did. And even our mom enduring everything that she did. And something else that has kind of come out with us doing this podcast is each week, and I know that we've said this before, you know, we figure out a topic, we figure out what we're going to talk about. But we've not talked about things with each other a lot. And this has seemed to help us do that too. Even with her. Mom dealt with so much. And I don't even think that we know. I think she's just let us see the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But that tip of the iceberg that we're seeing right now is more than we would have seen or she would have told us 6 months ago.
Right. Right.
And so that little bit is, I think it's cathartic for all of us because we are able to talk about this with each other. And as crazy as it sounds, it still helps each other. We may not have gone through the exact same thing. We might be like, oh my gosh, that is so sick. How did you have to, why did you have to go through that? Or, but it helps us to be able to talk to each other about it.
Right. And if we hadn't gone through it, we couldn't help anyone else.
Yes, exactly.
And we know what it was like to be at that point where you're putting fillers out to people that you think should be able to help because, they're ministers.
Yes.
They should know about this stuff. They're ministers. And to find out that you didn't have any help there either. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe us being in the position of not knowing where to turn, if there was anybody, we really didn't feel that there was anybody to help.
Yeah.
That we can open up, we can talk about the things that we've gone through, and we can help. Mm-hmm. We know how to fight. Mm-hmm. And that's why the enemy comes at us so hard before every episode to try to stop us from getting the word out there that there is someone out there that has gone through what you've gone through, who has had to go head to head with a demonic presence, has come out alive, has the knowledge to fight with you, and has some of the tools that you need in order to overcome that obstacle and that demonic presence that's got you held down, scared, and everything else. We've been there.
And when we've talked about going to houses and, or praying over people, it's still scary to us too, because yes, we have that knowledge. We know that God is in control and God is definitely stronger than anything that Satan decides to put on this earth or send to any of us. But we're still fighting Satan and his, whatever it is he sends, his demonic entities or whatever. So, for us to say we can, we are here to help anybody out. We will fight with you. But at the same time, it's not without fear also with us, but we just can't allow that fear to be sensed or being, taken, as a weakness for that figure to kind of attach to or feel, to know that
there's different kinds of fear. I feel there's a paralyzing fear that doesn't allow you to fight, and then there's a respectful fear. I know you've got power, but I know I've got the power of God, and through the blood of Jesus Christ, I can overcome whatever power you have.
That's what I was going to say, is like acknowledging that this does have power.
Yes.
But like you said,
but
we're going to set you in your place. Right. You do have power. However, we've got God's power on our side.
Right. We're not going in on our own power, because Lord knows on our own, we've got nothing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But we've been given the power through Jesus Christ to overcome
Mm-hmm.
these things.
Yes.
And that's the power that we go in with, not our own.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we know, I mean, there is that fear, but it's that, I don't even want to say respect, because I don't respect evil.
Right.
But it's that acknowledgement. I know you have power.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that you have power, but I also know that my God is way more powerful.
You've had enough power to make whoever it is that we're praying with, or whoever it is that you're praying over, to be scared or be filled with this fear. But this is it. You know, this is where it stops. So, yes.
So with this week, we've just discussed the obstacles. We've actually, I guess, probably gone out on tangents that we didn't plan on, but every week it's the same. We let God, we pray beforehand. We say, God, this is your podcast.
Yes.
You use us as your vessel to get out whatever it is that you want us to get out to your people, or whatever you want us to say that's going to open doors. Mm-hmm. And help whoever.
Allow us, or allow this podcast to be used to help other people. And that's what we say each week. That is our purpose for this podcast, is to be able to help someone.
Right.
And I want to say something before because I know we always say something else to wrap everything up. We've had people that are listening that know our family, know, the members of our family. And I just want to say, like today, I had a conversation with one of my friends, and she was talking about that she hadn't got to listen to the podcast, but she was going to. And I told her, I said, well, I just want you to know that there is going to be some things that you probably don't know about. And I just want you to be prepared for that. And for me, I can't speak for you, but I'm saying for me, to even just be able to say, you're going to hear things that you may not believe. And she and I have been friends forever and a day. That's a big step for me.
It is.
From even 2 years ago. To be able to say, this person was not what a lot of people thought. However, he wasn't a horrible person. There were extenuating circumstances that caused things to happen. But I wouldn't have even been able to say anything like that 2 years ago, because it was a negative connotation towards this family member.
And we get a lot of people that say, you all have been through so much and y'all are so strong, but they didn't even know the stuff that we had actually been through. They knew that we had lost our brother. They knew that we had lost our dad, and it wasn't a pretty circumstance or anything that we lost him through either. But they're like, but you're so strong. You've gone through 2 divorces. You're still strong in God, but they didn't even know what made us be able to go through those other things. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what happened when we were teenagers and young adults that gave us the strength to be able to cope with the things that were coming later on in life. So the strength that we have now and had during those devastating times had actually been built years ago, and people didn't know. They didn't know that we were equipped with that strength years ago.
Yeah. Yes.
Years ago.
And there are days when we still have our mental breakdowns. The devil still tries to tear us down completely. I don't do well with wintertime. I deal with seasonal depression, and I don't do well with wintertime. And Satan knows this and just digs in my head even more during that time. And then kind of attacks me physically too. And so continuing to do this and doing this every week, regardless, lets us take back some of that. Lets us take back that power,
Right.
So, yes.
And remind us where we came from.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that's going to wrap us up with episode 7. If you want to share our information, you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and we're on all of those platforms. And then also under the About section on our Surviving Darkness podcast page, you can find our links for all 3 of these platforms. So if you have any questions or anything, just reach out to us. But again, this is the end of episode 7, and we'll have everything ready for episode 8 next week. Thank you all.